Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, whether you're tuning in on your inspiration station here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM. We welcome you. Also, those joining us through our online affiliates around the world, we're glad to have all of you with us as well. I'm really excited to welcome author Linda Stasi to our program today. Linda has written a book that I know you all will be turning the pages with as you're closing out this year. It's called Book of Judas. Now, if the name Linda Stasi sounds familiar, many people have gotten to know her because of her first work of fiction called The Sixth Station. We'll talk to her about her main character, Alexandra Russo, what it's been like for her to see the response to Alexandra, but also what it's been like for her to put her in these amazing situations that hopefully none of us will find ourselves in, especially with the Book of Judas, asking ourselves, what will we do for those that we love? If just on hearing about the new book, we'll tell you at the end of our segment how you can get the book for yourself. But Linda, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Hi. Thank you, Cyrus. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, look, the pleasure's definitely all mine. Part of the fun of doing this show is, I got a chance, of course, to benefit from the work of others in the case. Linda, 4 years ago, you were talking about The Sixth Station and how fiction was something that you never thought that you would do. But then, of course, you took these years and ended up writing the book, The Sixth Station. Could you have imagined when you published that book, Linda, that the main character would be loved the way that she is and that that book would take off the way that it did?
Cyrus, it was a total shock. And I'll tell you why it was a total shock. Because aside from all the spiritual experiences that I had that led me to both books, which is a topic unto itself, we had a very hard time selling the first book, The Sixth Station, because I kept getting feedback from female book editors, believe it or not, saying, a 42-year-old woman can't have adventures like that. Can't you make her younger? Why does she eat so much? Why does she have to be so real? Can't you make her, like, blonder or, sexier? Or No, she's a real woman. She's a real reporter. And as far as I know, having worked in newsrooms since Buddha was born, I haven't seen any of those superhero women walking around a newsroom. And it really made me very upset that people still think this. I actually had one editor say, a female character can't be flawed. Really? Because a male character can be a drunk, he can be a bum, he can be all those things, and that's fine. But if a female character isn't a perfect superhero woman who looks like, like she belongs on Fox News or something fantastic like that, then she's not good. So I was very surprised when we finally did sell it, and then people loved her because they could relate that she is very much like everybody else, like all the rest of us.
Right. I think that's it. And I think, and then the fact that she is talented. I mean, The Sixth Station in the first book, Linda, of course, you're able to put her in a situation that a lot of reporters don't really like to be in, where they become the story instead of being able to cover the story. As a reporter yourself, as someone who knows what that's like, I mean, what has that experience been like for you to kind of take Alexandra and kind of make her this individual that is larger in some ways than the story that she's covered?
It was interesting because I've skirted that situation where I have been with people who become the news, and I'm in it, but I have never been the story. Thank goodness, I've never been the story. So it was really interesting because as a reporter, we have to stay objective to what we're looking at. But what if you are the story? Or in the case of my new book, Book of Judas, her best friend is the story.
Yeah.
And that's another whole thing. What do you do if your best friend or your friend is the story? How do you tell? What if they're in trouble and they've seemingly done something awful? How do you tell that story and still stay objective and still have a friend?
Yeah. and knowing the ripple effect that can take place. I think that's the other interesting thing that people will take away from Book of Judas, Linda, because there is this thing where this is very personal for Alexandra, for one, because it deals with someone who she loves, but also, of course, when knowing that there are bigger ramifications. I mean, you mentioned earlier about the kind of spiritual or faith aspect of this, and one thing we learn, even if people have not read The Sixth Station, one thing they learned in Book of Judas, and it's this one powerful scene that you wrote, that that here you have this character, Alexandra, who's in this thing that's so big that has to do with a lot of people's faith, but she herself is agnostic, but even she finds herself in situations where she, is a believer of sorts. I mean, what was that journey like for you to kind of share along with her?
Well, as the character, they say, everyone says, write what you know, and the character is very much me. Now, when I say I'm an agnostic, it means I am a very, very spiritual person, and I feel I've always, since I was a child, since I was a little bitty thing, knew and was very connected to what I believe is God. Mm-hmm. That being said, that doesn't mean that I believe in any particular organized religion. So an agnostic is someone who needs to ask the questions and is not just a believer without asking questions. And that's what I do, and that's what she does. And it always comes back to, well, I didn't create all this myself, and you didn't create all this yourself. God created all this yourself. And she likes to think of herself as tough New York City reporter, and I don't care about this, and I can just walk into any situation. But when the push comes to shove, it's the truly there are no atheists in foxholes or in subway tunnels or in tombs underground.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, too, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I think even for Alexandra, one of the things we're able to see in the book, Linda, is that she realizes that we all have, no matter what you believe, that we all have our part to play in what's happening in the world around us. I mean, was that an easy thing for you to kind of to play out through her, to realize that, yes, I mean, whether you believe in good or evil or the source of it, that we all have our part to play in the world that we say that we want?
I love that question because every day I think about what is my part. Every time I sit down to write, whether it's a book or, I do a newspaper column, the Daily News, which is read by millions of people. Every time I do that, I have been blessed to be put in a position where I'm allowed to do that. But every time I do that, I have to think, am I hurting somebody? What is the effect of this? And now with the Internet, with trolls and haters, it all becomes very scary in a way because if I write something people don't like, I get death threats. So I mean, it's you really have to be aware whether you're writing in a newspaper or online or blog or whatever. You must be very aware that once you send that out into the universe, you are sending something out that's going to come back. One way or the other, because as you say, we're all part. We're like bees in a hive. We're all part of it. It's the ripple effect. Every single thing that everybody does affects everything else in some way or other. The world has always changed with every single thing we do.
Yeah. Part of what will intrigue people, of course, Linda, with this new book is the title itself, Book of Judas. I mean, the idea, when people think of the name Judas, it's almost like when they think of the name Jezebel. I mean, there are not very positive things that come to mind. I mean, talk to us about the what-if scenario that kind of led you to this book.
Okay, this is what when you were talking about the spiritual aspects of things, this is what happened. When I wrote The Sixth Station, it began when my husband and I took a road trip. Now, we're not like normal people that would take a road trip to Disney World. We had to take a road trip through 1,200 miles of Turkey, which was insane to begin with. When we got to the house of Mary, the Virgin Mary, which I didn't even know that Mary ever lived in Turkey or that there was a house there, and now it turns out 4 popes have been to visit it and have given Mass there, I started having a lot of spiritual experiences that led me to writing the book, which meant I went on a road trip with an exorcist priest from the Vatican. I climbed a mountain twice. I stayed with cloistered nun. I stayed with monks who guard this relic that I believe has the DNA of Jesus on it. So when I finished writing the book, I was so glad to be done with this because it was really very exhausting, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And so I was laying in my house, which I'd owned this house for 12 years, my husband and I, and I'm looking on the bookshelf, and there is a book called I, Judas by Taylor Caldwell. And I thought, well, that's weird. I didn't bring the book in. I asked everyone in my family. Nobody'd seen it. But we'd lived there forever. Nobody had seen this book before. So I took it down, and I started reading it. And I was intrigued because it was written in the voice of Judas. So 3 days later, my daughter and I took a girls' weekend trip to Princeton, New Jersey. And because she's a smarty pants and I'm not, she wanted to go to the Princeton bookstore. I wanted to just get my nails done and have a spa weekend. And she said, let's go to the Princeton bookstore. So we went to the Princeton bookstore, and there on the front table is the Gospel of Judas as interpreted by Elaine Pagels. And I thought, what? What is that? How can it be? 3 days apart, I get 2 Judas messages. I hadn't thought about Judas my whole life. So I start reading the book, and here's where it gets really spooky. Start reading the book, and it says that this gospel, which was written 2,000 years ago, had been found in the 1970s in a cave in Egypt, in Elmina, Egypt. And then it went onto the black market, and it was lost and found and lost and found and lost and found. I'm reading. It says, and then it finally ended up in a safety deposit box, moldering for 17 years in a safety deposit box in Hicksville, Long Island. Well, I grew up in Hicksville, Long Island.
Oh, wow.
Then it says, in the Citibank branch on Broadway in Hicksville, Long Island. That's where I had my first ever bank account as a child. It's where my parents banked to the day they died.
Wow.
I almost fell off my chair. Of all the millions of billions, I don't know how many bazillion bank branches of different banks there are in the world, that this one should end up in my bank after 3 days of getting messages from Judas or whatever. So I said, okay, I got messages from Jesus the first time. I get messages from Judas this time. Here we go again. And what I discovered was even as shocking as this thing being in my Citibank branch.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. And we're definitely going to talk more about how that kind of parallels with what Alexander goes through. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, he's on the radio side or online. You're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome author Linda Stasi to our program today. Linda is the author of the new book, Book of Judas. You know her because of her book that we mentioned earlier, The Sixth Station. But it once again takes us through the experiences of a reporter named Alexandra Russo and what she's going to be trying to do to be able to not only, of course, to save herself, but also her son, but also, I think, others larger than herself as well. I think this goes to the responsibility aspect that you mentioned, Linda, and I'm so glad you said this because, I think a lot of times we don't think about how our actions or how our words or what we write, the impact that they can have on other people. Alexandra realizes this in a very real way. There's a part of the book where she's kind of weighing the options here of what could happen if I do this, or versus if I do that, the people who could be affected. I mean, what was it like for you to because the book is written in first person, for those who haven't read it, so you were kind of able to ask these questions along with her. What was it like for you to ask yourself, what am I willing to do for those that I love and for what I believe in?
It was a very tough thing for me to write because at one point in the book, Alexandra is confronted with the fact that she can save her own baby by giving up this lost document, or this lost document with the words of Jesus that possibly can contain his secret to resurrection in the wrong hands. If she lets it go in the wrong hands, it could destroy every child in the world. So how do you make a decision? If I don't, my child will be destroyed. If I do, I'm running the risk of every other child. It was very tough. And I had to put myself in her soul and say, what would I do? What would I do if my infant's life was hanging in the balance?
Mm-hmm. Linda, there almost seems to be, and this is a question that seems odd to me now, but I find myself wondering it more and more in a real way. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts about this, not only through your own lens, but also through that of Alexandra. And that is this question, because, there's even someone who says, Alexandra, some things are basically better off left where they are. And it makes you wonder, is there such a thing as too much truth? I mean, how have you been able to explore that question?
It's interesting because I think that growing up in the 60s and 70s when we were kind of shielded from a lot of the filth and the dirt. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether that was good because we got to live lives in a way that we thought were right because we didn't know any better, or whether knowing everything gives you the option of saying, well, I'll go in this direction because these are all the options. I don't think that knowing everything all the time is good because you can't know everything all the time. So people go off half-cocked on the Internet with a rumor, an innuendo, an idea that's not even true, and it becomes their truth. And that is very scary to me, very, very scary, because so many rumors become news now as opposed to just a stupid rumor somewhere. And they go viral, and then everybody believes it. And they believe a non-truth to be the truth. So it's almost an impossible question to answer in this day and age when there's so much non-truth and so much fake news from every direction. And so it becomes impossible to know what is the truth, really.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is the big thing. And I think for a reporter like Alexandra, it has to be especially hard, right? Because that is your living, to be able to report, what is the news and what it might be. And here you are in a situation where, you're wondering, okay, what could happen if this gets out? If people do know this, and how this knowledge could mean one thing for one group of people, and that's the other interesting thing about this book. It could mean one thing to one group of people, but something totally more sinister to someone else. I mean, was that part of the fun of writing this book as well?
It was actually an evil kind of fun because we're always questioning, if I lost this, what would happen? What if it got in the wrong hands? But what if the biggest thing in the world got in the wrong hands?
Yeah.
I think that when they, the father of the atomic bomb, there's a quote in there where he quotes the Bhagavad Gita where he says, I am become death. He developed the bomb, ended the war, but he understood the ramifications of not only killing all those people, but in the future, that we wouldn't be the only ones with that technology. And that's why he says, I am become death, because it's so gigantic. So and the secret that she has in her hands, that she comes upon, is that gigantic. And that's why she even quotes that to herself. And she's making a trade, my child for all the children, for everyone.
Right.
It's a real mother's conundrum. It's a reporter's conundrum. How much do you tell? I mean, I think there used to be a bargain between reporters and the president and politicians that they wouldn't go there. I mean, I think they just didn't go there. They didn't go to people's sex lives and their children and their children's illnesses, and there was a wall. You just didn't go there. Now everybody goes everywhere. So
right, yeah,
that's scary too.
It is scary, and I say for Alexandra, it definitely has to be scary, too, knowing, again, the impact of it all. I have to ask you this question, Linda, as we kind of step back from this book and kind of look at what you've done with The Sixth Station and now with Book of Judas. Has this become a comfortable thing for you now to be able to talk about yourself, to talk about the process as you've kind of done here in this conversation, and to kind of let us into, what it is that kind of drives you as a storyteller?
I'm very comfortable talking about it. I don't feel uncomfortable at all. I don't even feel uncomfortable talking about all the crazy spiritual experiences that are along the way. I don't feel comfortable. I used to feel uncomfortable as a child because I'd had all these experiences. I used to feel uncomfortable, but my family was always encouraging of it, and they said, this is your gift. It's not something bad. And I no longer feel at all embarrassed to talk about any of these crazy coincidences and signs and whatnot that I get, because it makes me a better writer. If I can put it out there without shame, if I can put it out there with the truth, then I've done my job, and I'm really happy with it if I've done my job. And I know, right. and most writers, if you're a good writer, you have to know when a sentence is wrong, when you're saying something that isn't true, when you're saying something that's hurtful and stupid. You know it. It's
right.
It's what It's like a car mechanic knows if he's not putting the right screw in someplace. A writer knows when you're not doing the right thing.
Right. Exactly. So I have to ask you this question, and maybe one that you can't tell us yet, and if not, I totally respect that. When you wrote The Sixth Station, did you see more from Alexandra initially, or at the end of it, did you realize that was not the last you wanted to see of her?
Oh, I didn't mean to leave it open, but I did because my Freudian slip was showing, and I didn't really want to do it again because it was such. I mean, can you imagine staying with crazy cloistered nun in the mountains, staying with like crazy monks who guard this relic in Italy, and having a road trip through the mountains of Italy with an 84-year-old exorcist priest from the Vatican who fainted on the altar, and I thought he was dead, and I thought it was like, oh my God, I've got weekend at Bernie's here. I've got an 84-year-old dead man. I got to drive back to Rome. So I was really happy not to do it again. But I did leave it open at the end because the last sentence in the Sixth Station, where she says, she's in the middle of this, she just lived through an earthquake, she's lost the man of her life, and she's just exhausted, and she's also having what she thinks is PMS, and she says, but man, it must be the mother of all PMS. Uh-oh. So that left it open to whether she was actually pregnant. And in the Book of Judas, she has become a mother. She has a 6-month-old baby, and now so I kind of leave it open again. I don't mean to, but I think I'm waiting for another sign of if I'm supposed to do another adventure with her. My publisher sure wants me to do another adventure with her.
I could imagine so.
I had dinner with him last night after we did a book signing at Barnes & Noble. My dear friend Nelson DeMille and I had a co-book signing at Barnes & Noble, and I went out to dinner with my editor afterwards, and he was like, so, what's your new idea? I said, my new idea is that I'm not going to have the French fries because I don't want to be like a big fatty anymore, and I am going to have the fish. And that's my new idea. He's like, yeah, wise ass. What's your new idea for a book?
Right. Well, we will definitely be looking forward to it. In the meantime, though, make sure you all pick up the Book of Judas. It's available through our friends at Amazon.com or through your favorite bookstore. If they don't have it, they'll be more than happy to order it for you. And, Linda, how can our audience stay connected with you?
Okay, I have a website, lindastasi.com. That's S-T-A, S as in Sam, I.com, lindastasi.com, and all my information is there, and I would love to hear from you, anybody. We have a glitch on Amazon today, and I've gotten like a bazillion emails from people who said they were trying to review the book because some people got it as a preview book, and some people listened to part of it and are reading the rest of it right now. And anything that they've posted is not going up. So that doesn't mean that nobody read the book. It just means that it's not some kind of glitch in Amazon.
Right. Yeah, one of those things that definitely happens. So definitely encourage people. For sure, yeah. And so we definitely want to invite you all, after you've read it, after you've listened to it, make sure you all do share your thoughts and also tell a friend about it. It's a great read. You really will enjoy it. And Linda, I know it's a busy time for you.
Thank you so much. Coming from you, that means a lot.
Well, no, I appreciate you taking out the time. I know it's a busy time for you, and I look forward to our next conversation together.
Yeah, I do too. This was great. Thank you, Cyrus. Much appreciated.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
And we definitely want to thank our good friend Anne Marie of Get Read PR, of course, for setting this up for us for sure. And thank all of you for tuning in to another edition of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live today. You all make it a great one.